This is the tutorial for the ART159 graphic design layout class, the product brochure cover. First off, I want to start inside the week 10 product brochure assignment here and just take a look at the assignment sheet. So considering these basic principles of design, going back to those basic principles, contrast, repetition, alignment, and proximity, I want to make sure that you're considering all the details here for this project. And we have some brochure requirements here to get us started. And it talks about some objectives here. First thing, creating some thumbnail sketches to base your design on. And from there, making sure that you actually, starting above, sorry, I'm jumping forward a little bit, making sure that you've collected a variety of these high resolution images and any logos that you'll need for your assets as well. And then from there, starting to base your cover and back cover design on those sketches that you have created. So let's take a look at this product brochure requirements here and go ahead and set up our InDesign file to get started. So we have a InDesign page size here. We also have a Photoshop background size. So basically the idea here is if you wanted to create some sort of larger Photoshop background size that would cover the front and back spread of the cover, you could always create a separate file here. And then to work with your actual working file, you're going to want to create an InDesign page that's going to be 8.5 by 11 facing pages. So in total, that's going to be 17 by 11 when they are a full spread with a bleed of 0.25. You need to have a minimum of 3 levels of typographic hierarchy within the interior of the product brochure, and you need to make sure that all your images and logos are high resolution. So 8.5 by 11 facing pages with a bleed of 0.25 is what our InDesign file should look like. So I'm going to go ahead and hop over into InDesign here, and I'm going to go to New File, and I'm going to go ahead and title this first thing, first and last initial, product brochure. And then I'm going to change my units here to inches so I can see this easier. Now, I want my pages to be 8.5 by 11 inches in height. And I want to make sure that I have this facing pages toggled on so that those are going to be a full spread. I also want to make sure that I have portrait orientation for this as well. And for the amount of pages, I want to create 4 pages. Sorry, a little glitch there. Let's go back. So we have our 8.5 by 11, 4 pages. We're using our facing pages. Glitched out on me here. But we want to start our pages on 2 so that we have that first page being connected to the spread. With the column, we can go ahead and leave that the way that it is. The margins, we can leave the default of 0.25. And here's where we want to set our bleed. Now our bleed should be a total of 0.25 according to our assignment sheet. So the actual file itself should be 1.25 inches all the way around to accommodate that. And now we can go ahead and hit create. And we should see something like this here, which has the 2 pages for our front and back cover and the 2 pages for our interior spread. You can always go in and edit this if you wanted to as well by clicking into File, Document Setup. Margins feel maybe a little tight, so I'll kind of kick these out a little bit further here maybe. Let's go with 0.5 here, just to make that a little more in the central area of our document. So that made the change here. Now, going back to the assignment sheet, we want to make sure that you are using a grid here as well. And if you go into the later pages, you'll see that it goes over how you should set this up, starting at page 2 with the columns, so on and so forth, so that we can have that set up here. But what you do want to do is create some sort of grid within the space or some sort of columns here. So what I'm going to actually do is come up here to Layout and go to Create Guides. And what that's going to bring up is this new dialog box for me here. And this is where you can enter in the amount of columns that you would like. Let's go ahead and click on Preview here so we can see. As well as rows, if you would like to bring those into the space as well. Sometimes it can be helpful to have some sort of grid space where you're dealing with some rows and columns, more of a modular grid. And what you will notice is the default of this is fitting the guides to the page. And what that does is it makes these modules inconsistent. You'll notice that the module up here is smaller than the module in the center because it's going all the way to the edge of the page and not considering the margins, which is where all our information is going to be. So once you've set the amount of columns and rows, make sure that you fit your guides to your margins. That way all of those modules are consistent in size so that your columns will be consistent in size as well. I'm going to go ahead and hit OK here. And now we can see that we have this for our front cover. Of course, we could do the same thing here, coming into creating the guides. And you could also do this in your master page as well, if you wanted them on both pages. We'll just go through this again here real quick as a reminder. 4 and 3, we're going to fit to our margins, default cutter size there. And I have that. Again, if you wanted to do that in your parent pages, you could. It would do the same thing in your entire document. But we'll just keep it in our working document here for the time being. So now we have this grid. We're going to start to lay out these images and logos that we've collected. Now, I'm going to use the Beats headphones, Studio Pro headphones, as an example. So the first thing that you'd want to do is collect the logo that you're going to be able to use. So just by searching in Google Beats Audio logo, I went into images and it actually gave me an option. Let's do it again here. It gave me an option for vector since it's a very popular brand. So I went ahead and clicked into that here. And there were several different websites that included vector logos for this particular brand. So that might be something to consider. You know, if the brand that you're choosing is very obscure and doesn't have a lot of this information or high resolution assets, then you might want to choose something else that's going to work. Obviously, this is not the correct Beats logo, so you want to make sure that you have the correct one. But I was able to download that. So the next step is to start collecting images. What I would suggest doing is going right to the website, looking up that particular product. You might be able to pull the images from the actual website in some cases. There was also the reference page of Apple Store, which also had these and were kind of isolated images that I thought were a little bit cleaner and could potentially work for the product catalog as well. So these were all high resolution images that we can potentially use within this. So the last bit here is some images of the headphones on a model potentially, or somebody wearing them so they're interacting or something, so we can kind of see this besides just the actual product. So I'm just gonna, oops, if I can get my spelling correct here. Google probably knows what I mean. So by searching this, I found some high resolution images. Again, you can always go into tools, go to size and large so that you're only searching for high resolution images. I thought this was a nice one. It has a big size here. And I was thinking about using this for the front of the brochure, but if the top of the image kind of gets cut off here. So one thing that I wanted to mention was that within Photoshop, you can isolate the images of the headphones. And you can also extend some of these images with this new generative text here as well. I guess this is actually a larger image here with the full component. But let's pretend we didn't have that. Let's pretend we just had this one here. I'm going to look at something a little bit different. And I'm actually going to pull this one because, you know what, it might still work for me. Always want to have more than less. But let's kind of use this as our practice. So going into this particular image here, if I go into the downloads for this, this one here. Yes. Again, the top of this image is a little bit cut off. I'd love to extend this image for the top of my brochure, but of course there's no information there. So how could I go about this? Well, with the new Photoshop, there's that generative background that is very, very powerful. So what I would want to do is extend the image. In this case, I'm just going to use the crop tool here, and I'm just going to extend the image frame up so that I can have some more image there to essentially use. I'll go ahead and hit enter. So I've just enlarged the image itself. Of course, it's just putting a color in the background here. So I'm going to come over to my marquee select tool, the square of the marching ants, and I'm just going to select the top of this here. And this is where it prompts me to fill this in with generative fill. So I'm going to click on this generative fill, and it's going to ask me what do I want to put inside there. And I'm not even going to put anything. I'm just going to hit generate here. Let's see what sort of results we get. doing its little thing in the background here, and taking all those pixels into account. And look at that. Created this awesome extension of the image here that we can see. Oops. Bring this out of the way. That we can see really took into account, and you'll notice that there's 1 out of 3 here, so I can actually toggle over. There's some additional options there. And look how well it did that hair. And if I didn't like these, I could keep hitting generate to get other options as well. But I think some of these are going to work. I think, honestly, I like number 3 here because it's still dark in the background. I can put that logo in there. So that would be a way of extending that. I could now go to File and Save. And this file will be updated here as a Photoshop file. Go ahead and put that into my downloads and save. And now that might be used for the front of my catalog. So the the logo as well. If I cruise into the downloads for that, I'm going to go ahead and just open up this logo in Photoshop here. You'll notice I already have a transparent background, so I can bring this right into InDesign as well. If you didn't have a transparent background, you can select that, isolate it, and erase the background using that same select subject tool that you can click through and select the actual subject and then or remove background if it's there. So coming back to the InDesign file now, this is where you'd want to start placing that. So again, to place an image, we know that we're going to use the rectangular frame tool. And I'm actually going to come in here, start on the right hand side, going all the way to the red lines. Those are the bleed lines. I'm going to bring that all the way over. Sorry for the text messages coming in. And create this text frame here, or excuse me, this image frame. And then I want to place the content inside here. So I'm going to go up to File and Place. In this case, I have the downloads, which I just saved that PSD file. Hit Open. Now it's very large inside there. So again, you can come over to your properties and play with the frame fitting for how this is going to work. I'm going to use fill frame proportionately, and then I'm going to use my white arrow tool to reframe this within the space here. Bring that down a little bit, something like that here. It's looking pretty nice. And now let's do the same thing. Let's go to File and Place and bring in our logo. And you can see how we'd start to put this together now. I might want to put in here the actual name of the specific product, Studio Beats Pro. So of course you want to find a typeface that would work for that, and bring that in, as well as potentially the headline. You can add that in with your text document here as well. As for the back, you can continue with that, bringing in some additional imagery in relation to the product, and then using your text tool to start to create text boxes fitting within the grid. And then to insert your placeholder text, we'll use the right click and go into Fill with Placeholder Text. This is going to create that lorem ipsum for you that you can select, change the character style, and of course the sizing. And this is where you can start to explore the hierarchy as far as the different headers and things like that go within the space as well. Different styles within the font. That one here, just go to Futura instead. Maybe I want to use Futura Bold for my headers. Slightly smaller there, something like that. So this is where you would start to place that information in the general contact and imagery there on the back as well. So this is to get you started. Please work to make sure that you are using appropriate imagery, appropriate high-resolution images, as well as logos, taking into account the contact information and the product. And again, on the front and back cover, let the product breathe a little bit. You can always go into Photoshop and isolate those images and bring those in as well. And think about a balance between product and model images to help to feature this in the best way. If you have any questions, please reach out, and look forward to seeing the finished products.